Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
This story was told by the sacristan of the Church of Saint Eulalie in Neuville-d'Aumont. He told it to me one nice summer evening. We were sitting under the trees at the White Horse Inn, drinking a bottle of old wine. We were drinking to honor a man who had died. That morning, the sacristan had buried him with full respect, under a cloth decorated with shiny silver tears. "My poor father, who has passed away," said the sacristan, "worked as a grave digger. He had a cheerful nature, maybe because of his job. People say that those who work in cemeteries are often happy. Death does not scare them. They don't think about it much. I, for example, can walk into a cemetery at night as calmly as if I were walking into the White Horse Inn. If I see a ghost, it does not bother me. I think the ghost probably has its own business to do. I know a lot about the dead. I even know things that priests don't know. If I told you everything I have seen, you would be shocked. But it is wise to keep quiet. My father, who loved telling stories, only told a small part of what he knew. Even so, he told the same stories many times. One story he told at least 100 times was about Catherine Fontaine. Catherine Fontaine was an old woman. My father remembered her from when he was a little boy. Maybe a few old men in the village still remember hearing about her because she was very famous. She was poor but had a very good reputation. She lived alone in a small apartment at the corner of the Rue Aux Nuns. The apartment was in a turret which you can still see today. The turret was part of an old, half-destroyed house near the garden of the Ursuline nuns. On the turret you can still see some carvings and faded writing. The old priest of Saint Eulalie, Monsieur Levasseur, said the Latin words on the turret mean, "Love is stronger than death." He said this referred to God's love. Catherine lived alone and worked as a lace maker. People in our area used to value lace highly. No one knew about her family or friends. Some said that when Catherine was 18 years old, she loved a young man named Chevalier d'Aumont Cléry and was secretly engaged to him. But many people didn't believe this. They thought it was just a made-up story. Catherine acted more like a noblewoman than a working woman, and even though her hair was white, she was still very beautiful. Her face always looked sad. On one of her fingers, she wore a ring made by a goldsmith. The ring had two tiny hands holding each other. A long time ago, people gave these rings to each other when they got engaged. You've probably seen something like that before. Catherine Fontaine lived a very holy life. She spent much of her time in churches. Every morning, no matter what the weather was like, she went to Saint Eulalie to attend the 6 o'clock Massachusetts. One night in December, Catherine was in her small room when she woke up to the sound of bells. She thought they were ringing for the first Mass of the day. The faithful woman got dressed and went downstairs into the street. The night was so dark that she couldn't see the walls of the houses. The sky had no stars, and everything was silent. There wasn't even the sound of a dog barking. It felt like no other living thing was nearby. But Catherine knew the streets well. She could have walked to the church with her eyes closed. When she reached the corner of Rue Aux Nons and Rue de la Paroisse, she saw the timbered house with carvings of the tree of Jesse on its beams. From there, she noticed the church doors were open, and bright light shone from inside. Catherine walked to the church and stepped through the open doors. Inside, she found a huge crowd of people, filling the entire church. But she didn't recognize anyone. She was surprised to see that everyone was dressed in old-fashioned clothes. The men wore velvet and brocade, with feathers in their hats and swords by their sides. They carried tall walking sticks with gold tops. The women wore lace caps with combs shaped like crowns. They held fans, hiding their painted faces. Catherine could only see their powdered foreheads and small beauty marks near their eyes. Everyone moved quietly, without a sound. Their footsteps didn't echo, and their clothes didn't rustle. The lower seats were filled with young men in simple brown jackets and breeches. They held the waists of shy girls who blushed and looked down. Near the holy water bowls, peasant women in red skirts and lace tops sat still on the ground, like animals resting. Young boys stood behind them, twirling their hats in their hands and staring with wide eyes. All the faces looked serious, as if they were thinking about something both sweet and sad. Catherine went to her usual spot and knelt. She saw a priest walking to the altar, followed by 2 helpers. But she didn't recognize any of them. The Mass started, but it was completely silent. No words or bells could be heard. Catherine felt someone watching her. When she looked out of the corner of her eye, she saw the young Chevalier de Montclary, the man who had loved her long ago. He had been dead for 45 years, but he still looked young. She recognized him by a small mark above his left ear and by the shadow of his long eyelashes on his cheeks. He wore red hunting clothes with gold lace, the same outfit he had worn the day they met in St. Leonard's Wood. On that day, he had asked her for a drink and stolen a kiss. His smile was the same, showing his perfect teeth. Catherine whispered, "Monseigneur, you were my dear friend. I gave you my heart long ago. May God bless you. I wish I could feel sorry for the sin I committed by loving you. My hair is white, and I am close to death, but I don't regret loving you. Noble Lord, who are these people in old clothes attending this silent mass?" The Chevalier answered softly, his voice like a faint but clear whisper. "Catherine, these men and women are souls from purgatory. They sinned against God by loving people too much, as we did. But their sins were not done with full intention, so God has not cast them away. They are being purified in purgatory, and the worst pain they feel is being apart from their loved ones. Their suffering is so great that an angel from heaven takes pity on them. With God's permission, the angel lets them reunite with their loved ones for 1 hour each year. They come to their church to attend this Mass of Shadows, holding hands with the ones they love. If I am allowed to see you before your death, Catherine, it is a gift from God." Catherine Fontaine quietly answered the Chevalier, "I would be happy to die Dear Lord, if I could have back the beauty I had when I gave you a drink in the forest. While they whispered to each other, a very old priest walked through the church with a large copper dish, collecting offerings. Each person dropped an old coin into the dish. These coins were no longer used, and included ekis, florins, ducats, jacobuses, and rose nobles. The coins fell into the dish without making a sound. When the priest came to the chevalier, he put a gold Louis coin into the dish. It also made no noise. Then the priest came to Catherine Fontaine. She searched her pocket but couldn't find even a small coin to give. Not wanting to let the dish pass without giving something, she slipped the ring off her finger. This was the ring the chevalier had given her the day before he died. She dropped it into the copper dish. As the golden ring fell, it made a loud, heavy sound, like the deep clang of a church bell. At that very moment, the chevalier, the priest, the server boys, the ladies, the gentlemen, and the entire congregation vanished. The candles went out, and Catherine Fontaine was left all alone in the dark. After finishing the story, the sacristan took a long drink of wine. He thought quietly for a moment and then said, "I have told you this story just as my father told it to me many times. I believe it is true because it matches everything I've noticed about the ways of the dead. I have known the dead since I was a child. They often return to what they loved during their life. For example, greedy people who hid gold come back to guard their treasures at night. But watching over their money doesn't help them. In fact, it often leads to someone digging up their hidden treasure in places haunted by ghosts. In the same way, dead husbands sometimes come back to bother their wives who have remarried. I even know of some who keep better watch over their wives after death than they ever did while alive. Of course, this is wrong because the dead shouldn't make people jealous. But I'm just telling you what I've seen. It's something to think about if you marry a widow. As for Catherine Fontaine's story, it is proven by what happened next. The morning after that strange night, Catherine Fontaine was found dead in her room, and the church beadle found a gold ring with 2 clasped hands in the copper dish used for the collection. And, I'm not the type of man to make jokes about such things. Now, how about we order another bottle of wine?